In this video, we're going to try to answer all those questions you have on key signatures and try to demystify some of the rules. In Chapter 1, I will show you the easiest way to find any key signature by applying the same rules each time. In Chapter 2, I will show you when it's right to call a note a sharp and when you should call a note a flat. In Chapter 3, I will show you why we have sharps and flats when they appear to be exactly the same note. And in Chapter 4, I will show you why white notes are sometimes called sharps and flats. We're going to use a system of tones or whole steps and semitones or half steps to find the key signature of any major scale. Tones or whole steps will be shown with a long pink block, and semitones or half steps will be represented by a half-size blue block. So let's move on to Chapter 1. What's the easiest way to find a key signature? Let's begin on the note C. We then move along by 2 notes, which is the equivalent of a tone or whole step, which brings us to the note of D. We then move along by another 2 notes, which brings us to the note of E. We then move along by 1 note, which is the equivalent of a semitone or half step, which brings us to the note of F. We then move along by 2 notes, which brings us to the note of G. We do the same, which brings us to the note of A. We do the same again, which brings us to the note of B. And finally, we move along by 1 note, which brings us to the note of C. We have just created the scale of C major. Here you can see the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone pattern of all major scales. This is the logic behind finding any key signature or major scale. Using this, we have discovered that the key or scale of C major does not contain any sharps or flats. We will continue to use this logical system as we move on to Chapters 2, 3 and 4. So on to Chapter 2. When is it a sharp and when is it a flat? So this time let's start on the note of F and see what happens when we reach halfway through the scale. We move 2 notes to reach G. We move 2 notes to reach A. We move 1 note to reach a black key. We'll come back to this shortly. We move 2 notes to reach C. We move 2 notes to reach D. We move 2 notes to reach E. And we move 1 note to reach F. We have just completed the scale of F major. But let's go back to the black note, highlighted here in red. This note has 2 names, A sharp and B flat. Well, does the key or scale of F major contain the note of A sharp or does it contain the note of B flat? Well, it contains the note of B flat. Why? Because we need 1 of each alphabet letter. Let's write the alphabet letters of F to F here. OK, we have F, we have G, we have A. Now, when we get to the next note, we have the choice of A sharp or B flat. Well, we've just used A. If we move to A sharp, we've used A twice, which is not allowed. Therefore, we need to use a note of B, which will be B flat. We can then continue on to the end to ensure we have 1 letter of each note. Therefore, we have discovered that the key or scale of F major contains a B flat in its key signature. Let's move on to Chapter 3. Why do some keys have flats and some keys have sharps? This time we're going to start our major scale on a black key. This key here can be called either D sharp or E flat, but let's not make a decision on that just yet. Let's find the note in our scale. We move up 2 notes. We move up another 2 notes. We move up 1 note. We move up 2 notes. And another 2 notes. And another 2 notes. And finally we move up 1 note. And here's our completed scale. Now we can call our first note D sharp or we can call it E flat. Well, let's start by working out the notes in the key or scale of E flat major. Like in Chapter 2, we need to check we have 1 of each letter from E to E, so let's add the letters above. We start on E flat, the next note is F, the next note is G, then A flat, followed by B flat, then C, then D, then E flat. That was quite simple. Now let's create the scale of D sharp major. We start on D sharp. Straight away we run into a problem. The next letter on our list needs to be some sort of note of E. Well, we can't use E flat as that note is the same as D sharp and we've already used that one. And we can't jump to F as we need some sort of note of E. This means we will have to call the note F by its enharmonic name of E sharp. We now need some sort of note of F, but we've just used the note of F as E sharp. OK, so we'll have to call the note G by its enharmonic name of F double sharp. Just like a sharp is the move of one note to the right, a double sharp is a move of two notes to the right. Now we get into familiar territory by using G sharp and then A sharp. Now we need some sort of note of B, but our next note is C. This means we will have to call the note C by its enharmonic name of B sharp. Now we need some sort of note of C, but the next note is called D. OK, we'll have to call the note D by its enharmonic name of C double sharp. And then we can end the scale on the note of D sharp. Let's put these scales side by side. Which one is easier to understand and play? I would suggest the easiest scale to play and make is E flat major, as we don't have to deal with white notes being called sharps or worse still, double sharps. Scales and key signatures are given names which make them understandable without the need for double sharps. This is why in piano exams we learn the scale of E flat major rather than D sharp major. After all, we will press the same keys on the piano no matter whether we follow the notes of E flat major or D sharp major, as these scales are enharmonically equivalent to each other. This is why in the rules of key signatures we have sharps and flats to make the music as easy to understand as possible. In doing this, we discover that E flat major has three flats, B flat, E flat and A flat. So let's move on to chapter 4 and look more into why white notes can sometimes be called sharps and flats. Let's challenge ourselves to find out how many sharps are in the scale or key signature of F sharp major. We start on F sharp. We move right by two notes. We move right by another two notes. We move right by one note. We move right by two notes. We move right by another two notes. And right again by another two notes. And we move right by one note to reach our final note. Let's write out the letters from F to F and check them off like we did in chapter 3. We start on F sharp. We move to G sharp. We move to A sharp. We move to B. We move to C sharp. We move to D sharp. Now we move right to a white note, which needs to be called some sort of E. The white note we have come to is labelled as F. Therefore, we need to call it by its enharmonic name of E sharp. Then we finish on F sharp. The key signature of F sharp major is F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp and D sharp, with E sharp being a white note on the piano. This is how white notes can sometimes be called flats and sharps. Thank you for joining me today.